I've decided to start a new life without you. The words sliced through the air of the elegant private gallery, where we had gathered for the opening reception of my husband's latest architectural exhibit. Marcus, my husband of 28 years, stood beside a marble pedestal displaying his firm's new city design. His announcement displacing the official toast he was supposed to be making to the firm's success. The hushed chatter of the city's elite ceased. Sips of artisanal cocktails halted mid-motion. 60 pairs of eyes darted between Marcus and me, waiting for my reaction. For the tears, the fury, the desperate plea for sanity everyone expected. Instead I smiled. Congratulations on your honesty. My name is Victoria Sterling. I am 54 years old, and until this moment, I had been playing the role of the devoted society wife and firm anchor perfectly. I had put my own career as a curator and art historian on hold to support Marcus through 3 partnership struggles, 2 near bankruptcies, and countless high-pressure client phases. I had raised our brilliant son, Julian, who stood a few feet away, his own small glass of sparkling cider in hand, his expression frozen in shock. From the corner of my eye, I could see Chloe Harrison, Marcus's much younger protégé/associate, shifting uncomfortably near the exhibit entrance, where she stood with architects I had hosted at our home for years. The same colleagues who apparently knew about the affair but never thought to tell me. The same Chloe who had once asked me for advice about her thesis. With practiced calm, I reached into my small clutch and pulled out a sealed ivory envelope. I placed it gently on the marble pedestal beside Marcus's speech notes. "What's this?" he asked, his triumphant expression faltering. "Something for you to read later," I replied, keeping my voice steady. I turned to Julian, whose face had gone pale. I gripped his arm briefly. "I am so proud of you, sweetheart. This evening is still about your father's professional accomplishment." I emphasized professional. Then I stood taller, adjusted the silk wrap on my shoulders, and addressed our stunned guests. "Please enjoy the rest of the reception. I wish you all an insightful evening." With that, I walked out of the gallery, my head held high, feeling 60 pairs of eyes following me. The heavy glass door slid shut behind me, muting the beginning of anxious murmurs. Outside, the cool, damp Seattle air hit me, but I welcomed it. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely. Behind me, I heard the glass door slide open and slam shut, followed by Marcus's voice, no longer commanding but high-pitched and frantic. "Victoria, what the hell is this? What have you done?" I kept walking toward the valet stand, allowing myself a small internal smile. The envelope I'd handed him contained the beginning of my revenge, one I'd been meticulously planning for months. I had always been the practical one in our marriage. While Marcus dreamed grand designs and took massive financial risks, I maintained the stability our family needed. I was the one who quietly invested in safe funds for Julian's future when Marcus overextended himself securing office space downtown. I was the one who took on extra consulting work, anonymously advising a small regional museum when his midlife crisis led him to invest heavily in an expensive, high-risk real estate development project. A passion that lasted approximately 6 months before he grew bored. My own dreams, opening an independent art history consulting firm, were perpetually on hold. After Julian is settled in grad school, I told myself. After Marcus's firm finds stability. For months ago, I noticed discrepancies in our joint accounts. Small transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Having spent 20 years handling our family's complex finances, these irregularities stood out like red flags. I could have confronted Marcus immediately, but something held me back. Perhaps it was intuition. Or perhaps it was the growing professional and emotional distance between us over the past year. Instead, I began quietly investigating. What I discovered was worse than I imagined. Marcus had been systematically moving funds to a separate personal trust for over a year. He had also been taking Chloe to exclusive global design conventions, gifting her vintage jewelry, and looking at property on Bainbridge Island, all while telling me we needed to liquidate some assets to finance the firm's next big pitch. Then came the emails I discovered when Marcus left his laptop unlocked. Messages about their new life together. Messages about how he was finally escaping his stifling routine. Messages about their plans for the weekend after the gallery opening, the time he had chosen to make his grand exit from our marriage. What Marcus had forgotten or perhaps never fully grasped was that I had been managing complex financial legacies for 30 years. I understood money trails. I knew how to trace corporate and personal assets. And most importantly, I remembered the prenuptial agreement we had signed 28 years ago, when I inherited a substantial portion of my grandmother's estate. The agreement he had insisted upon, ironically, to protect his future creative earnings, contained a moral turpitude clause tied to any financial misconduct that would prove to be his undoing. While Marcus plotted his escape with Chloe, I was building my case. I consulted with specialized attorneys. I documented every hidden transfer. I gathered evidence of their professional misconduct and personal relationship. I prepared divorce papers and temporary restraining orders on the funds. I timed everything perfectly, knowing Marcus would want to wait until after his major exhibit opening to avoid professional embarrassment. What he didn't expect was that I would serve the divorce papers immediately before his planned announcement. But with the papers still safely hidden in court records not yet accessible to him, what Marcus didn't know was that I was always 3 steps ahead. I didn't return to the gallery. Instead, I drove to our home, a sprawling contemporary house on a bluff overlooking the Puget Sound that we had purchased 15 years ago. The house that Marcus had already promised to sell so he and Chloe could purchase a smaller waterfront property, according to emails I had seen. I parked in the garage and calmly entered what had been our shared space for over a decade. Everything looked the same. The commissioned art on the walls, the original Eames chair that was my father's, the worn wool rug where Julian and I had once built forts. Yet everything had changed. I went upstairs to the master suite and opened the large walk-in closet. Marcus's bespoke suits and casual clothing were already gone from the main section, packed in rolling luggage and hidden in the back, ready for his planned departure tomorrow. I smiled at his predictability. He had always been meticulous about his image, but careless about the important things. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from attendees, from Julian, even from Marcus's sister Vivian, who had flown in for the opening. I responded only to my son. "I'm okay, my love. This is not your burden to carry. Go home with your Aunt Vivian. We will talk tonight. I love you." I had protected Julian from the truth for months, not wanting to overshadow his college preparation with family drama. He would be angry that I hadn't told him, but I knew he would understand eventually. Julian had inherited my methodical nature along with his father's vision, a powerful combination that had earned him acceptance to his dream graduate program. 3 hours later, I heard Marcus's Porsche pull into the garage. The front door burst open. "Victoria!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the open-plan house. "Where are you?" I was sitting in the study, calmly reviewing documents on my laptop. I closed it as he stormed in, his face flushed with anger, the ivory envelope crumpled in his hand. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, waving the papers. "You served me with divorce papers today of all days." "I thought it aligned nicely with your timetable," I replied calmly. "You wanted to start your new life. I'm simply facilitating a rapid legal transition. You had no right." "I had every right," I interrupted, my voice steady. "Just as you had every right to choose Chloe. We all make choices, Marcus." "The prenup is irrelevant now," he said, his voice suddenly attempting confidence. "It only covered the first 10 years of the partnership. Any business lawyer will tell you that." I allowed myself a small knowing smile. Actually, it didn't. Section 12 specifically states that the moral turpitude clause remains in effect for the duration of the partnership and any resulting legal proceedings. Your lawyer should have explained that to you. "Oh wait, you rushed this and didn't consult one, did you?" The color drained from his face as reality sank in. The prenuptial agreement he had insisted upon to protect his potential wealth would now cost him everything. The house, the vacation home in the San Juans, his firm equity, and his portion of our retirement accounts. His grand gesture at the gallery had just become the most expensive announcement of his life. "You can't do this to me," Marcus whispered, collapsing onto the leather armchair. "We built this life together and you chose to dismantle it," I replied, "though not on your terms." Marcus's phone buzzed persistently in his jacket pocket. He glanced at the notification. Likely Chloe, wondering where he was and why he wasn't following their script. He ignored it. "This is malicious, Victoria," he said, trying to appeal to my character. "What about our history? 28 years together means nothing. I looked at him. This man I had loved for nearly 3 decades. The man who had been my steady partner through starting the firm. The man who had once bought me a first edition art book for my birthday. Our history meant everything to me, I answered truthfully. That's why your deception hurt so profoundly. His expression softened momentarily. Then maybe we can fix this. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Marcus. This was a calculated plan spanning more than a year. You systematically moved funds and assets. You secured property with her. You planned to announce our separation publicly to professionally humiliate me. His face hardened again. You're overreacting. Am I? I picked up my phone, opened the recording app and played his own voice. After the opening, I'll tell her it's over. A public setting is better. She won't make a scene in front of the firm's clients. Then Chloe's voice. And she has no idea about the offshore account? Marcus again. None. Victoria trusts me completely. That's her only weakness. The blood drained from his face. You recorded our conversations? That's illegal. Not in a private residence when one party consents to recording their own conversations, I responded. I didn't record your private moments with Chloe. I'm not cruel. Just the conversations about your plans to defraud me of marital assets. Marcus stood suddenly agitated. I need to make some calls. Of course, I said. Your firm's general counsel might be a good start. I'll be staying at Vivian's tonight. Vivian's? He sputtered. My sister's condo? I nodded. She's quite disappointed in you, actually. She was the one who first became suspicious after you cut her out of the firm's family investment. She didn't tell me immediately. She confronted you first. You promised her it was nothing, that you would end it. When she realized you hadn't, she came to me. This was another blow he hadn't anticipated. Vivian and I had always been close, but Marcus never imagined his own sister would choose my side. Everyone's betraying me, he muttered. Ironic, isn't it? I gathered my purse and a small overnight satchel I had packed earlier. You have until tomorrow evening to remove your remaining personal items from the house. After that, the security codes will be changed. As I headed toward the door, Marcus called after me, desperation in his voice. What about Julian? Have you thought about how this affects our son? I paused, anger finally breaking through my calm facade. Don't you dare use our son as a shield, Marcus. You certainly weren't thinking about him when you were planning your new waterfront life with Chloe. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked at it and sighed, defeated. Chloe is waiting at the apartment building. She thinks I got us the keys tonight. I couldn't help but smile slightly. The rental unit you put in both your names? The lease agreement you signed last month? Marcus nodded, looking confused. You might want to check with the building manager. That application was flagged for missing required income documentation and never completed. The manager called our home phone to verify information. I handled it myself. I walked out the door, leaving Marcus to face the first of many consequences. His perfectly planned new life was unraveling faster than he could process. Vivian lived in a charming condo complex closer to the University of Washington, where she worked in administration. When I arrived, she greeted me with a fierce hug. I just heard from Julian, she said, pulling me inside. Are you truly okay, Victoria? I'm better than I expected, I admitted, following her to the kitchen where a bottle of excellent Cabernet was already open. I never thought Marcus would make such a spectacle, Vivian said, pouring 2 glasses. The gallery opening in front of the entire architectural community. He has completely lost his professional mind. It was meant to humiliate me, I explained, accepting the glass. A public rejection designed to make me appear hysterical if I fought back. Vivian's face darkened. My brother always did have a flair for self-aggrandizement, but this is beyond anything I expected. And the financial maneuvering. I'm so sorry, Victoria. We settled in her minimalist, art-filled living room. Vivian had chosen a life dedicated to her work and personal pursuits, valuing independence above all. What exactly did you put in that envelope that caused such a swift meltdown? She asked. I explained the contents. The official divorce filing, the detailed evidence of his financial deception, and the enforcement of the prenuptial agreement's moral turpitude clause, which would strip him of most marital assets due to the financial misconduct. The prenup, Vivian mused, shaking her head. I remember Father practically forcing him to sign it, citing your family's initial inheritance. The irony is absolutely devastating for him. My phone rang. Julian. I took a deep breath before answering. Mom, he said immediately, his voice thick with emotion. I'm coming over to Aunt Vivian's. I need to understand. Honey, you don't have to tonight. I'm already in a cab, he interrupted. Dad is calling people, telling them you've had a nervous breakdown and are maliciously targeting his career. He's rewriting the narrative. Let him talk, I said. The truth will emerge soon enough. About 30 minutes later, Julian arrived, still in his smart reception attire, but looking exhausted. He came straight into my arms. Why didn't you tell me, Mom? He asked, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I didn't want to jeopardize your focus on grad school applications, I explained. You worked too hard for this. He pulled back, wiping his eyes. Well, Dad took care of jeopardizing everything anyway. We moved back to the living room where Julian finally received the full account. The affair, the systematic financial deceptions, and the elaborate escape plan Marcus and Chloe had orchestrated. I suspected something was off with Dad, Julian admitted. He's been distant, overly secretive with his phone, but I never imagined this level of planning. It's painful to see these things in people we love, Vivian said gently. My phone buzzed with a text message from Eleanor, my attorney. The emergency motions had been granted. The accounts I had identified were frozen immediately, pending the divorce proceedings. Marcus was restricted to a limited stipend for living expenses, enough to function, but certainly not enough to follow through on the property purchases he had planned with Chloe. I showed the message to Vivian and Julian. Excellent, Julian said firmly. He deserves to feel the consequences. He's still your father, I reminded him gently. Your relationship with him is separate from what's happening between us. Julian shook his head. Maybe in time. But right now I'm angry. He hugged me goodbye this morning and told me how proud he was of my grad school plans, all while planning to destroy our family's foundation hours later. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Vivian answered it, returning moments later with a rigid expression. It's Marcus, she said. And he's brought Chloe. I sat perfectly still as Vivian led Marcus and Chloe into the living room. Chloe looked visibly distressed, fidgeting with her silk scarf, her eyes avoiding mine. She was 37, a striking younger woman, but the confidence that had defined her professional persona was gone. Marcus, by contrast, looked incandescent with rage. Victoria, you need to call off your lawyer and unfreeze the assets, he demanded. We can discuss this like rational adults and reach a fair settlement. Julian stood up immediately, stepping slightly in front of me. Perhaps you should have prioritized being rational before announcing your departure at a public event, Dad. Marcus glared at his son. Julian, this does not involve you. It involves me entirely, Julian countered. You disrupted my mother's life and the stability of our home right before I leave for graduate school. That involves me. Chloe tugged nervously at Marcus's sleeve. Marcus, maybe we should leave. He shook her off. No. I am not leaving until Victoria agrees to cease these malicious legal actions. Vivian folded her arms, her voice sharp. My sister-in-law is currently the only rational person in this room, Marcus. You created this mess, and you will deal with the legal consequences. I remained seated, allowing the spectacle to play out. The accounts will remain frozen until the preliminary hearing, I stated calmly. That is scheduled for Thursday. The judge will determine appropriate financial access at that time. Thursday. Marcus sputtered. What am I supposed to use for the next 3 days? You have your personal trust account, I reminded him. The one you've been secretly funneling funds into for the past year. That should be sufficient for your needs. Chloe's head whipped toward Marcus, her eyes narrowed. You have a separate trust account? With how much in it? A very clear rift was forming. Marcus had clearly been painting a financially rosy picture for his younger partner. Marcus ignored Chloe's question. This is beyond vindictive, Victoria. This isn't the woman I married. Perhaps you never really knew the woman you married, I replied. Just as I clearly never truly knew the man I married. Julian turned to Chloe. Did you know he was going to announce it at the gallery? During an event that was supposed to be about his professional legacy? Chloe had the grace to look deeply uncomfortable. I thought he was going to speak to your mother privately first. The public announcement was unexpected. Marcus shot her a look of utter betrayal. Their united front was crumbling fast. You both need to leave, Vivian stated, stepping toward them. You have severely upset Julian, and you have no right to be here. Julian, Marcus pleaded, desperation returning. You understand that relationships change, don't you? Sometimes we evolve apart. My son's face was stone. What I understand, Dad, is that you are a coward who planned his escape to avoid accountability. What I understand is that you were siphoning off family money, while I was told we needed to take out loans for my graduate tuition because the firm was having a tight quarter. Marcus paled. That's not what happened. It's exactly what happened, Julian cut him off. Please leave, Dad. I can't look at you right now. The silence was heavy. Finally, Marcus turned to go, his shoulders slumped. Chloe hesitantly followed. At the door he looked back at me one last time. This isn't finished, Victoria. I will fight you for every asset. I met his gaze unblinking. You are more than welcome to try. After they left, Julian collapsed onto the sofa. I feel awful, he whispered, burying his face in his hands. I've never spoken to him that way. I embraced him. Sometimes standing up for what is right is the most painful thing we ever have to do. Vivian returned with the bottle of wine. To a future free of bad architecture and worse husbands, she said, raising her glass. Indeed, I thought. This painful ending was the long-delayed beginning of something truly new. The preliminary court hearing took place on Thursday, exactly as scheduled, at the King County Courthouse. I arrived with my attorney, Eleanor, who specialized in complex financial family law. Marcus came with the young associate he had hastily retained, a commercial litigation attorney, completely out of his depth in family court. The judge, a pragmatic woman with a reputation for meticulous detail, reviewed the prenuptial agreement. This document appears valid and comprehensive, she stated, looking at Marcus's young lawyer. Do you contest the enforceability of the moral turpitude clause? The associate stammered. Your Honor, we believe the clause is overly broad and punitive given the length of the marriage. Section 12.1 clearly defines moral turpitude to include systematic financial deception of one partner for personal gain, the judge read aloud. That definition is clear. There is no expiration date indicated for this specific clause, only the dissolution of the marriage. Marcus was pale, whispering urgently to his lawyer, who looked increasingly resigned. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence of unauthorized fund transfers appears to directly violate the financial disclosure requirements in Section 23. She looked up. I am ruling to maintain the freeze on joint and corporate accounts pending full financial discovery. Mr. Sterling's trust account will remain accessible for necessary legal and living expenses only. The primary residence will remain in Mrs. Sterling's possession during proceedings, as stipulated in the agreement. Marcus was aghast, muttering, "This is impossible," loud enough to be silenced by the judge's gavel. As we left the courtroom, Marcus caught up to me in the hallway. "Victoria, please. We need to talk reasonably. 28 years has to count for something." "It counted for everything," I replied, my voice hard. "Until you decided our family's trust was worth less than a quick escape." I walked away, leaving him alone in the corridor. Word spread through our social circle and, more importantly, through the Seattle architectural and arts communities. Friends rallied around me, while Marcus's meticulously cultivated image of a devoted family man dissolved. The financial freeze meant he couldn't service the debts of his struggling firm or follow through on promises to Chloe. 2 weeks after the hearing, Vivian called, her voice full of dry humor. "Guess who is suddenly moving back into her shared student housing?" "Chloe," I replied, unsurprised by the news. Indeed. Apparently, she discovered that the staggering net worth Marcus bragged about was mostly tied up in firm equity that is now in receivership, and the Bainbridge property was only ever under contract. I couldn't help but smile. He was always better at selling illusions than he was at managing reality. Meanwhile, I was finally truly rebuilding. Using the secure financial base I had maintained, I leased a beautiful space in Pioneer Square and launched Sterling Art and Heritage Consulting. I specialized in handling complex art valuations and legacy planning for women navigating major life changes. My first clients came through referrals from my attorney and Julian's godmother. The work was intellectually challenging and immediately fulfilling in a way my corporate life had never been. Julian called regularly from his new city, proud of my progress. "You're finally doing what you love, Mom," he told me. "You're an advocate." "I'm just preparing other women for whatever comes next," I replied. Being valued for my expertise, rather than my supportive role, was the profound reward of my liberation. The final divorce hearing fell, fittingly, on what would have been our 29th wedding anniversary. Marcus arrived alone, looking gaunt. His firm was on the brink of collapse, and Chloe had moved on to dating a successful software developer. The judge upheld the prenuptial agreement completely. Marcus left with his personal effects, his failing firm's debts, and the limited funds from his personal account, which, after paying his mounting legal fees, left him barely enough for a leased apartment. I retained our home, my full retirement accounts, and the majority of our jointly held, secure investments, exactly as the fidelity clause stipulated. The justice was absolute. The very document Marcus insisted upon to protect himself had been his undoing. As we left the courtroom, Marcus approached me one final time. "I destroyed everything," he said, his voice quiet, stripped of all arrogance. "Is there any way back for us?" "No," I interrupted, gentle but firm. "That part of my life is entirely closed." "I understand," he replied. For the first time in years, I believed he was truly honest. "I hope you find happiness, Victoria. You earned it." 6 months later, Sterling Art and Heritage Consulting was thriving. The envelope I had handed Marcus at the gallery hadn't just been my escape plan. It had been the key to the life I was meant to have. I had reclaimed something far more valuable than marital assets: myself.